Good evening, everybody. Once again, just allowing a couple more minutes for persons to enter. We will start at latest 6:10. Thank you again for joining us. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the third installment of the Fatherhood Talk series. I am your host, Derek Smith Jr. I'm a father of four, three boys and a girl, a husband, a 40 under 40 leader within the Bahamas, and also a business columnist. This series is a collaboration between the University of the Bahamas and the Pico Brand. Tonight, we'll discuss, among other topics, fathers in education and mentorship, perceptions, misconceptions, realities, and the best practice to close any gaps.
I was looking at a magazine the other day, and I was reading this article about foundations. And I saw this picture, a beautiful picture of a house, fantastic house, and the windows were perfect, the doors were immaculate, and then they showed on the next page that the house had no foundation. A house without foundation is condemned. And I've come to this conclusion, you might want to write this down: the greatest crisis in national development is not lack of money or lack of investment or even crime and unemployment. But behavioral scientists have proven that the greatest crisis in national development of any country is the absence of fathers in the nation and in the home. This has been proven scientific studies. There is no substitute for father. Please write that down, because we are beginning to see people redefine marriage, and in some cases they say a child can have two mothers. But there is no substitute for fathers. Please write these three statements down. Number one, a teacher is not a father. There are people who teach you things in life. Don't confuse them with being a father. Number two, a guardian is not a father. He may be assigned to stay with someone, to bring you up, but it doesn't mean that they can take the place of father. And number three, a friend is not a father. You may have been brought up by some friend or some relative, and they've done good things for you, but they can never take the place of father. Matter of fact, how do you identify a father? 1 Corinthians chapter 4. Please get your pen, find this verse, and underline it. Because this is where I think we've made some mistakes. We have confused a teacher with a father, or a guardian with a father. But let's read what God's constitution says about a father. 1 Corinthians 4 verse 15 says, even though you have 10,000 guardians in Christ, some translation says teachers, you do not have many fathers. For in Christ I became your father through the gospel. Therefore I urge you to what? Imitate me. Now this is important. When you go to school and you have a teacher, you don't need to imitate the teacher. You just simply take what they give you as far as the lesson and you go home. You don't want to be like the teacher. So how do you identify a father distinguished from a teacher or a guardian or a friend? Here's how. The father is the person who tells you, do what I do, say what I say, be like me, dress like me, act like me, go where I go. You have many teachers, he says, many guardians, but you lack fathers. The Bahamas has a reputation of letting other people bring up the kids now. Especially on the family islands, we dump our kids on Grammy, or some step somebody, or some uncle or aunt. The Bible says you can have many teachers, many guardians, but you still need what? A father. And a father is not a person who teaches you. Anybody can tell you what not to do and what to do, but for them to be with you long enough so you can imitate them, that is a different story. Write this down. A father is the one who is present, observable, and you can emulate. See, you cannot imitate who is absent. And I can tell you now that most of the men in this auditorium today, if you use this definition, they never had a father. They had a guy who slept home and was gone before they woke up. A father is the one you can imitate. You cannot imitate who is absent. You can imitate who's observable. I ask you a question, man. Would you want your kids to do everything you're doing? Even the secret stuff? Should they imitate your behavior, the words you use, how you act toward women who are not your wife? Should your son imitate everything? It's the Hebrew word Abba, and it means source, sustainer, foundation. It means root. It means genetic pool. Matter of fact, the word that is used in the Hebrew is progenitor, progenerator, the one who is the supporter of genes. The father is the foundation, the source of life. God says, honor your source, honor your sustainer. I guess if you look at these words and think about your father, some of you don't have a good definition anymore, do you? Was your father a foundation for your life? Was your father like a root that you could hold on to, and when the storms come, you stay steady? Was your father the one who was the provider and the source that you could depend on to supply you with what you needed all your life? Is your father the genetic pool you're proud of? You're proud to be related to that person? Are we ashamed of our fathers? I heard a young man said one day, he says, I am so sorry I have my father's genes. That was the most depressing statement I heard for ages. But God can become your father and give you new genes. And that's the good news. God can restructure. I was
All right, guys. As we get into this evening's conversation, you know we do it here at Fatherhood Talk. We're going to allow our panelists to introduce themselves. So, Dr. Cheney, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, good afternoon to everyone that's out there. I'm Marcus Cheney. I'm a native of Pine Bluff, Arkansas. I'm married. I'm a proud parent of 5. And I have 2 great sons and 3 beautiful daughters. They range in ages from 35 all the way down to a 9-year-old. That's a long story. We won't go into that one. I am currently professionally the vice for student affairs and enrollment management at Lincoln University in Missouri. Also, I serve as the executive assistant to the president for campus operations at the university also. I serve on several national boards. One that I'm very honored to be part of is Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated, where I serve as the International Director of Education. So again, it's a blessing to be here and to be on this panel.
Father Bain, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am Father Roderick Bain. I'm a priest. I've been a priest for 20 years, been married for 18 years. I have 3 children. The oldest, of course, is 17, 15, and 8. I am a lecturer as well as a teacher. I do quite a bit in the government schools, and I'm doing some work now in a private school, guidance and direction as well as teaching. And I also lecture the Anglican Theological Institution that we have. I try my best as I can, to guide and direct the young men of our nation, as I try to at least implant something in them, a degree of positivity. And because I'm a priest, definitely I would have to use God along with whatever teaching methods that I have. And I'm happy to be here on this panel.
Thank you, Father Bain. Thank you, Father Bain. And next up, he went to Jared's. Jared, tell us a little about yourself.
Hi, my name is Jared Benjamin. Good evening, everybody. I'm a native of Natchitoches, Louisiana, a military veteran. I served for 15 years in the U.S. Army. I deployed to Iraq 3 times and Afghanistan once. I'm the CEO of Lead Firm, and I professionally work at Florida International University, where I serve as the director of cybersecurity apprenticeship programs. I'm excited to be here today. The work that I do empowers young people across the entire spectrum of higher education, specifically fraternity and sorority life. I have a proud affiliation with Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated, where I serve as the Deputy Chief of Staff for the First Vice President and the First Vice President of Rho Sigma chapter here in Miami, Florida. Again, it's a pleasure. Happy Father's Day, brothers, and I hope that this panel and my participation in this panel is enlightening to all the listeners and the followers today. Thank you, Derek.
Thank you, Jared. Appreciate it. And last but by no means least, we have the one, the only, the incomparable Lamont Stubbs. Take it away, Lamont.
Stubbs. I've been married for 12 years to the beautiful Christy Stubbs. We have 3 beautiful children, Logan, Coleman, and Colton. They range in ages from 10 to 6 months. So we kind of, so we have a 10-year-old, a 7-year-old, and 6 months. So we thought we were done, but God had a surprise for us, and we happily welcomed that surprise into our family. I am in love with my family, to say the least. My family is very important to me, and fatherhood is something that I take very seriously. I'm also the director of the Gentlemen's Club program, which is a nonprofit mentorship program here in the Bahamas. We mentor anywhere between 40 and 50 young men each year. It's a 16-week mentorship program where we, allow these young men to become true gentlemen, become good fathers when it's their time, and become respectable members of our society. So through that program and with my efforts, I act as somewhat of a father figure to many young men other than my biological children. And it's something that I take very seriously and try my endeavor best to be that role model and to be that guidance and to be that light for these young men as we go forward. Thank you, and I'm very excited to be a part of this discussion this afternoon.
Thank you. We're excited to have you. This is a dynamic local and international panel. This is going to be awesome. All right, guys, what I'd like for you to do, please, is place your phones in grid mode. If you haven't have it in grid mode, you may have it in speaker mode. Please feel free to place it in grid mode. And we're going to play our game, which is Put a Finger Down, Fatherhood Edition. And I'd like for the panelists to jump in. Also, I must note that we do have some of our former panelists here. I see Dion Cadet is here. Thanks for being here, Mr. Cadet. Excellent contributions last week when we discussed remote fatherhood, amongst other topics. All right, first questions, panelists. But I would like you to put your left hand up, 5 fingers. All right, good, excellent. And we're gonna start. Put a finger down if you lead a mentorship program or have led a mentorship program. Okay, good. Put a finger down if you're a girl dad. All right, so far everybody is even. Put a finger down if you are a father before marriage. Jared, we separating from everybody. It's real. All right. Good, be a ready, repentant father, man. Good. All righty, good. Put a finger down if your relationship changed with your father after you became a father. All right. Thank you for playing, guys. Let's get right into it. Audience, you can kindly place yourself back into speaker mode. Good. First section for the evening. Misconception or reality. And this one goes to Jared. Only mothers can keep children accountable. Is that a misconception or reality? And the question is, with the change in the education delivery process, how are you as a father ensuring your child is kept accountable?
First, I'll say that's a misconception. And definitely, I think accountability is a village responsibility. And in that village, in the home, is both parents' responsibility. I co-parent, so my child is not directly in my home, but I know I have to take a stakeholder responsibility in ensuring that my daughter is not only academically performing, but she's also accountable in understanding her actions are a direct result of her of how she's viewed, how she's respected as a young lady, and ensure that that I do my part to actively engage. And even when I don't feel welcomed to engage, I must still, take liberty and ownership of my part of being a parent and understand that, hey, it's not going to always be welcomed, but I have to ensure that I'm a participating a parent in the form of accountability and helping her understand why I'm doing it, because it's not going to be always, seen in the present as beneficial, especially with my child, but help her understand that, years later, you're going to reflect on these moments and it's going to start a pattern of accountability, because I believe accountability is also a behavior. So once they learn that behavior, it'll be easy to pick that behavior up out of the household and bring it into the school, out of the school, bring it into the workplace, out of the workplace, bring it into their lifestyle until she's a mother, and then she can bring it into her parenting style as well.
All right, Jared, I fully agree with you. The approach to life is always a science. Everything is about the science. Fully agree. Anybody else wants to jump in before we go to the second point of misconception or reality? All right, no problem. So, Dr. Cheney, misconception or reality? Fathers are not good at time management. How do you manage your personal and professional time to ensure involvement in your children's lives? And I'd like your son to keep you honest because he's in the group.
You know, that's a misconception. I know that as a father, and I can say this as an African American father, you're trying to accomplish those things professionally to provide for your family, but you have to be able to really kind of divide that time up. You have to be able to go to your children's events. You have to be able to, do the things that you need to do. And it also comes into play even with social events. I've been my son who's listening now. He's a member of the fraternity. He saw my involvement in the fraternity ever since he was young. So again, from that to the church, of being involved and actively involved in church, it's just a thing that you might not get that 6 to 8 hours of sleep, but you have to be able to have that time and effort somehow. If it means leaving the office a few minutes earlier, leave the office a few minutes early so you can make that particular game or make that particular event. Try to just kind of swing that time around as much as possible. But you have to be able to really do that as a father so that your children will see that as they become fathers. And my son, who's on now, is a father also, can be able to see, hey, I can do the things I need to do professionally, but I also need to make sure that I spend that time and effort with my son, with him as a son. So I think it's a misconception, but it's a tough spin. I will be honest with you. It's real tough, especially when you're trying to accomplish the things that you're trying to accomplish professionally, and that demand is on you to spend those hours professionally, and to be able to come home and say, hey, how was your day, homework, being able to ask how's things going in graduate school. You still have to be able to do those things. So that's just part of it. And so it is a misconception though.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Cheney. Lamont, misconception or reality? Parenting skills remain the same over time. How do our parenting styles differ from the generations before us, Lamont?
That's definitely a misconception. It's very different. Our parenting skills and what we need to raise kids today is much different than it was in the past. One of the first things we have to, take into consideration is the current technology environment that we're currently placed in. As we can see from the COVID-19, after everything went south, we had to then revert to a learning platform that's technologically based, a work environment, again, that utilizes technology. So technology is a huge factor in our kids' lives. And through that technology, they are so much more exposed to so much different things. Their worlds are not ours, where we had encyclopedias or we had to go and ask questions or go in the library and sit down and look through books to research. But there is so much that they have available at their fingertips. And we have, as parents, we have to be able to explain and be able to ensure that our kids are prepared for the information that they're being fed, being able to know what is suitable for them, what is not suitable, and how to use technology to their advantage. I know we all, most parents always complain about the screen time with their kids and what they need, what they do with their games, etc. But we have to, understand the importance of technology, be able to embrace that, and be able to lead and guide our kids in an environment that we are not always in control of what they have available. and be able to ensure that they are strong enough, smart enough to understand and be able to use it to their advantages. So I think technology is one of the major factors or one of the major things we have to deal with today that in previous generations did not exist.
All right, Lamont. I remember during a pre-conversation, you were saying that one of your kids would WhatsApp
Yeah.
their breakfast order.
Yep. So,
You know?
obviously schools now closed, so they have a little more leeway when they get to go to bed. So while they're up at night and they decide what they think they want to have for breakfast, I'll meet a WhatsApp because they know I'm an early riser. I'm up from about 5:36. So when I get up, I see that loving WhatsApp with a very loving message, and then whatever they want for breakfast, and lo and behold, by the time they get up, it's done. This is amazing how these kids use the technology to their advantage,
Sounds like they're training you. You're not training them.
Exactly.
All right. So, Father Bain, misconception or reality? Christian fathers are better equipped to handle fatherhood. Do you agree or disagree? And why? Father Bain, I couldn't let you slip as easy as I let the others slip. Unmute yourself, Father Bain. I can't wait to hear your answer.
That's a very complex question, a simple, complex question. Well, I'll have to say it's a myth. Well, it's the reality. Christian fathers tend to make better fathers in the sense that morally and being able to represent Christ-likeness definitely will be high on the agenda and something that is big in the household. Church and everything that goes along with the gospel and spirituality and standards and the Christian way and the Christian walk, all those things would be something that a Christian father will exemplify or will definitely use to guide his children by. But we find it difficult sometimes when our children are exposed to the world outside, where it's almost as if they have an attraction so their Christianity will be put to a test. And it is said that pastors' kids, the priest kids, can be some of the worst, or the devil attacks them a bit more. But whatever it may be, being a Christian and being someone who follows God and being someone who's in the church definitely give you an added leverage. And it is better able to guide and assist a father in terms of him rearing his children and, guiding them in the right way.
All right. Okay. I'm gonna test that shortly, Father Bain. I'm gonna test that shortly, Father Bain. Lamont, misconception or reality? Mothers have more pressure to deliver in parenting. The question is, does the pressures and sacrifices of fatherhood differ from motherhood?
It's it does. It does quite a bit. I think mothers, I do agree, and I would admit, are under tremendous pressure in raising kids. Again, I feel in a household there should be split responsibilities. And as parents, you need to parent together as opposed to leaving any one parent to do most of the parenting. But I think, and we hit on a few of the points that make fatherhood or make the pressures of fatherhood a little bit different than motherhood. One being time management. As fathers, we always want to be the leader of the home as well as being the person who provides financially, the person who provides emotionally, the person who provides spiritually. And doing all these things could be difficult at times, because we are human beings and we also have other pressures that we have to deal with, other things that we have to ensure that's in line. So we always have to put whatever we're dealing with to the side to ensure that our families are straight, make sure our families are protected, make sure that our families are in an environment that's going to be conducive for their growth. So I definitely think the pressures are different. Not discounting the pressures or what mothers or motherhood is, but fatherhood is a tremendous pressure and sacrifice at the same time. because it's very difficult sometimes to, you always have to put your needs and your wants second to those of your family. And I feel we have to continue to have broad shoulders. You have to continue to have our feet anchored and into the ground
That's
so we
the
can be able
anchor.
to claim whatever comes our way. So it is different, and it is tremendous pressure. Again, not to discount motherhood, but it is a different type of pressure that we face.
Okay. All right. I would venture to agree. I would venture to agree on. I was just doing some research, and I'm currently reading Principles of Fatherhood by Miles Monroe. And he speaks about the fact of a father's being the foundation, and he runs the comment from Father Bean. He runs into he sets the analogy in the Garden of Eden. And he said, if you read the story of Adam and Eve and how it's portrayed to children versus what is actually written, no matter which version, it speaks to the fact that the serpent went to the woman, convinced her to take a bite out of a forbidden fruit, and it doesn't speak to what went wrong. It doesn't even say that anything went wrong. It actually said that something went wrong once the woman convinced the man, who was the foundation of which she was built on, right, to eat the fruit. Then it speaks to how everything went wrong. So, Father Bean, for persons who say, hey, we have two moms in the home, we can raise this child right. We have two fathers in the home, we can raise this child right. What would you say to them?
You're mixing a number of things there, and you're trying to be very testy with this. But this, of course, is a very thin line to walk. In the world that we live in today, as we look at the creation story, most of us, if not all of us, would have to agree that it's a mythological interpretation of beginnings. And it's kind of like our existential predicament at every step of, the turn of life. We have choices to make. There'll always be the temptation. It's kind of sad that the story was told by men. It was a patriarchal society, so the woman was given the bad press, and the man was given the good press. But nonetheless, in the understanding of human beings and sex and gender, there was the making or the creation of male and the creation of female. That back then in that society was the ideal way in which a family is to begin. Man and woman to bring in, well, for the sake of procreation, to have child or children. And so that was the traditional, that for a long time was the way it stood. However, there are many different changes in our world today, many of which we see tend to go against the grain of Scripture. And some definitely will be in some view in that dark sphere. But be it as it may, we are moving towards a better understanding. I say better understanding, a degree of acceptance and a realization that same-sex marriage, same-sex union, same-sex cohabitation, all these sorts of things are viable now, and they are, not say trending, but they are now in vogue, and they are here. There are cases, and there are many cases. I know we don't have many here in the Bahamas, but for my brothers who are in the United States, they can definitely speak of same-sex couples or unions where they do have a child or children, all right? They might have adopted or otherwise just taken in a child from a brother, sister, or somebody else. But nonetheless, there are those who believe that they can raise a child or a family with, say, same sex. Two men in a homosexual relationship, or two women in a lesbian type relationship. There are lots of different rights and obligations and all sorts of different views as it relates all of this. And there's too many right now to get into. Too many nuances, and I don't want to cast any judgment of sorts. But this is now a possibility, and this is actually happening. And this is actually happening. All right. So the question will lead me down a road where I would have to choose a side with the traditional picture that we have of Adam and Eve, and now Steve and child, or Eva and child, and have to readjust the traditional family and to put a new face on parenting, which for some will be the new normal and a welcome, approach to the new type of family. And some see nothing wrong with it, and they have their reasonings. But for the traditional family type, some of us who believe definitely a mother and father as marriage is intended, a man leaves his mother and father and home and he cleaves to his wife, and the two become one flesh, and there they create a family. And so, it is under that auspices or under that tent that procreation happens and family life happens. But nowadays, there's been a shift in the pendulum and things are changing. And sometimes I know our brothers in the Americas may have had an opportunity to catch up psychologically, theologically, sociologically, and otherwise, even legally. But here in the Bahamas, we are way behind the ball, as it were. We probably some people would like to do it, but we don't have the legal or the psychological or the theological infrastructure to deal with that when it comes to family, family matters.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I'm not saying that we go ahead and that is the new route, but I'm saying that as many things as are there in the world, there are options. The Christian
Yes.
route, of course, is male, female, children. That is the ideal way.
Understood. Thank you, Father Ben. I guarantee you the next question will not be that hard. I promise. But in any event, we're gonna move into some general questions. Jared,
Yes.
how early did you begin stressing the importance of education and assisting in establishing goals for your children?
For me, one, I actually went to college as a non-traditional military obligation while serving the country. So, it was challenging because I had to do a lot of balancing, to be quite honest. And in that balance, one of my accountability partner was my sister. You know what I'm saying? And I watched her rear her children, and they looked at her as an example, to be quite honest. So I thought to myself, finishing this education goal will allow me to even use that as accountability measures when it's time for my daughter to finish her educational goals or reach her goals. Then I also leaned on a quote from Frederick Douglass. It says, it's easier to build a strong child than fix or repair a broken man. And as I thought about that, I said, if I don't start early on, it's going to be harder to reinforce it later. And so in saying that, I would say there's never a too early point. With technology these days, when my daughter was 2, she was already touching my cell phone. I can be honest with y'all. I grew up in a single parent household. My dad and my mom were divorced much early in my life. And our finances wasn't positioned for me to get no phone until I was grown. And my first phone, I was coming out of boot camp, about 18 years old, and I had just got a phone. So see my daughter understanding how to send a text message at 4, let me know her aptitude and her intellect was limitless. So when I say how early is too early, it's not. I mean, I look at now the generation that we're in with our Gen Z, or some would even say millennials. The earlier you expose them to not just our hard skills in academia, but also soft skills like empathy, communication, credibility. The earlier you expose them to those opportunities, the bigger their trajectory will be. The pathway to success will be that much greater, And then in addition to exposing them to early education, early opportunities for education, you also got to remember that costs something. You know what I'm saying? It don't just cost time. It's a financial obligation connected to that. I remember getting that first daycare bill. You know what I'm saying? You're real picky where your child's going to go. You want to be sure they're not just being babysitting. They also get an education, and in finding the right one, that first bill was a wake-up call. Like, oh, man, this is what my mama was talking about when she said raising you is high. Understanding that commitment, the emotional support that came with it. Just recently, COVID-19 made my daughter's learning environment turned into a virtual learning environment. I thought I was smart until I had to look at what fifth graders do these days. You know, all the degrees you get on the wall don't compare to a fifth grader looking at you like, Daddy, you don't get it? And I'm looking like, give me a second as I go in the other room and look on YouTube. You know?
Google.
You know what I'm saying? You know, so with that being said, I not only do I share my experience in saying that the earlier the better, I encourage others to say the earlier the better and have a sounding board because it's emotionally draining. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, finding people that you can call and say, hey, brother, you know, how's it working in your household? Because let me tell you how it's working in mine right now. You know, and where you don't have the resources, lean on others so that those resources produce a really, really, really robust education opportunity for your children.
Thank you, Jared. I really appreciate it. I see in the chat section, a person said they really agree with you.
Yeah.
And Lamont, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, what I wanted to add just a little bit, you know, I really agree with what he said, and I think it's important for them to start early because, you know, I think with finding a career, passion needs to be involved. And at an early age, you need to be exposed to different things to then understand how to determine what your passion is, to then translate that into a career. So I think you definitely need to start early because it's a process. You know, it's a long process, and it's very important to combine passion with a career because, again, once you marry those two, it's bound for success. You know, passion has to be heavily involved, and you need to be exposed to different things to understand and develop that passion. So I think it's very, very true. And I just felt that.
Agreed, Lamont. General question to the panelists. You can choose anyone's answer. As you can see, everybody knows when it's a production at a home. Lily is a part of it. So, you know, we're teaching her early, so she's behind the scenes with the host, ensuring that everything flows properly in the background. So it's never too young. She's 2 years old and 2 months. With that being said, general question to the panel. General question. Any advice for young fathers who are still trying to accomplish professional goals as well as raising a child? Who wants to take that on? Who had that problem? That great hurdle.
Yeah, I would like to touch on that too, if I may. I think it's a step-by-step, day-by-day situation because it's a very delicate line trying to balance a career while building a career as well as balancing being a father. And what I find is, again, you have the sacrifice. What I would have done was I was in the midst of taking a professional examination or a series of professional examinations when I had my first child. So what I did was I married studying with fathering, they say we shouldn't say babysitting, but parenting. And I would combine, read out loud. She was a toddler, then read out loud to her while I'm retaining information at the same time, keeping her engaged and keeping her going. So it was a day by day. Every day I had to find new avenues to be able to incorporate both. Sometimes I would have to, wake up 4 o'clock in the morning to get stuff done to ensure that I have my evening to spend with the kids. So it's a day by day, step by step, and sacrifice. But it's definitely doable. A lot of us had to do it at some point. A lot of us are continuing to do it, and it's something, again, needs to happen, but it needs to be a day by day or a step by step situation.
I fully agree. As my 13-year-old who's going on 14 this year, we had him very young, and now he's sitting here shooting photographs of me producing this, and I'm just thinking of the fact that my wife was 19 and I was 24, and it was literally a system where there was work from 7 o'clock in the morning until 3:30. To jump on the bus at certain points in time. You leave work, you get to your 4 o'clock class, you hit your 4 o'clock class, you hit your 6 o'clock class, and after that, somebody picks you up, and you're home, and then you relieve mom, who is holding down the fort all day, and then you take on that, that process until the baby is asleep, and then after that, there's homework.
Yeah.
And then it starts all over again. Yeah. And you could not say at any point in time that you were tired. Yeah. And because it was your responsibility.
And also just add a little bit, because what I also see tend to happen is a lot of people sacrifice parenting for careers. And I think, for each its own, but it's difficult at a later age in life, then wanting to go ahead and try and help kids and then mentally and emotionally dealing with that child. at an older phase. So it's a very delicate balance, and I think it's very important to just approach it case by case, step by step. Like I said, it's difficult to always have a manual on certain situations, but you just have to, evaluate your situation, your circumstances, and just make it work. And definitely try to balance it too. Because me personally, I always wanted to start a family early, and I'm happy I tried to balance as opposed to working on my career first and then trying to start a family after I felt as if I achieved some sort of success. So it's definitely a very important issue, and an issue that lots of people deal with on a daily basis.
If I could
Agreed.
something.
Jump right in there, Father Bean. Yeah.
Yeah. A few questions ago, you asked somebody about time management, whether it's the mother or the father who's better at it or whatever. But all of this speaks to family planning. As I'm listening to you, when do you have a child? I know sometimes, I don't want to say accidents, but things happen and you do have a child and you didn't plan for it, the child that is. And so you would have to know, hey, at what age you want to be married, at what age you want to have a child, at what age you and your wife, hopefully you get married right away. Continue studies or pursue advanced studies and that kind of thing. And then you'll have to know how to not disadvantage the child because you are pursuing studies. A lot of people disadvantage their child for the sake of whatever advancement on the job placement or wherever. They just want to know, on the job field, they're doing well, just throw the baby somewhere. Get somebody to do that or whatever. So it's very good when a father can be one who can manage time and use time as a precious resource. And, some brothers, I'm not casting aspersions or anything, but sometimes it's difficult for us to, organize time and to be able to place ourselves where we need to be, when we need to be, where we need to be. And sometimes the women are better at it. Sometimes there are men who are much better at it than women. And so, it's just a matter of dynamics and who we are as individuals. I think all of us have our personalities and other things, that we can manage. But time management speaks not only to managing time for the day, but even family planning as a whole, and even after the child is here and on to college and whenever else. But family planning, time management, everything is hand in hand.
Okay, Father Bean. Anybody else has anything to add before we go on to another general question?
Well, Derek, I was thinking, early on in academia, research shows that individuals who poorly perform in their undergraduate studies tend to do better in their graduate studies. And I think that's associated with not just, it's maturity, one. Two, sometimes you find yourself fitting your own bill. There's no failure when you're paying for it yourself. You know what I'm saying? And then also, I would even say, with maturity, you tend to understand accountability a little bit more. I always tell folks, accountability partners are taken lightly until you need them. So, having someone check, and then also expanding your circle. When you're younger, all you have to depend on is your family, is your father, is your mother, is your direct siblings. Then when we get older, much like some of us talked about when we first got in our bios, we've expanded our circles and joined professional organizations, mentoring groups, fraternities, of the church. So as you expand your group, you should find people who have like-mindedness. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to just hang with a bunch of single brothers. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to hang with a bunch of brothers who have no children. I need to, when I be able to say, hey man, it's 10 o'clock, I got to break away because I may have to wake my daughter up for school. I need them to understand they probably need to be going to do the same thing.
Yeah.
You know what
We
I'm
need
saying?
no
So,
smoke.
right. So when you have like-mindedness as a support system, it tends to make you perform even better. You know what I'm saying? Some of my chapter brothers, I understand the value of LinkedIn. So now I tell them, hey man, I don't see you on LinkedIn, but I see you on Instagram. That level of accountability now changes his professional trajectory. And so as a father, those are things I have to say to my daughter as well. Like, I see you on TikTok. However, I need you to put that same amount of time into your timetables, into your division, into understanding the teacher told me that you're doing fair in reading. I need you to do excellent in reading. So those things, as you associate with people who are like-minded, you'll see your accountability shift, your performance shift becomes greater. And not only does it become greater, it becomes an example. like the opening video said, your children have to talk with you the other day, Derek, on WhatsApp. Me and you both seem to wake up about 5 o'clock on the grind in front of our computers. And the comment you made was, I do more before 8 than most people do in a day. So my daughter knows when I'm getting out the bed and I'm coming downstairs, I'm grinding to be sure her future's taken care of or secured. So, her seeing that, now her expectation is when she finds a husband, she's looking for a provider and a king who's gonna grind like a daddy grind. You know what I'm saying? Now, when she's out, she understands I have to grind at the level my daddy grind. Because if I don't, excellence isn't produced. So I think being an example is a level of accountability. But also, I encourage the listeners to expand your circle and join people who you want to be like, or will hold you to a standard that you want to be.
Preach. Preach, Jared. Yeah. Yeah. I'm not nodding. Lost of words. Wow. Yeah, Jared. Yeah. Okay. Since we already got you on the stage, Jared, how do you keep your feelings separate from your decision-making process with your daughter?
Man, it's a big old word I'm gonna use real quick called cognitive dissonance. I'm gonna unpack it. It's like, knowing the right thing to do, but sometimes we just don't choose the right thing to do. You know what I'm saying? So, sometimes my emotions make me want to react to some of the things she do, but I have to make it a learning experience for her. You know what I'm saying? So if I react with my initial emotion, what happens is all she ever sees is reactions. She don't see examples. So she can't directly make it a learning experience, because all she sees is, am I disappointing him? Am I frustrating him? Am I making him upset? When I have to learn, she still has the intellect of a 10-year-old. And me at 35 can't expect a 10-year-old to operate at a level that I'm operating. So I have to make them all learning experiences. Like, hey, I noticed you didn't come home and get right to your lesson. It comes out the wall, and now the TV can't come on. You know what I'm saying? So helping her understand that there's lessons in our errors or our mistakes. But what I say is sometimes you don't know the value of success till you taste failure a little bit. You know what I'm saying? And so for me, I can't tell you I've been successful in everything I've done, Derek. I launched my company, and in launching my first year, we didn't make no money. You know what I'm saying? 2 years later, we did fab. 3 years later, we did great. So I have to learn that at 10 years old, I can't expect her to trigger my emotions, me react, and that's good fathering. I have to think for a second. So sometimes I use the emotion as a feeling, but it's the action right after.
Agreed.
Initially, I want to say, hey, chill it out. But sometimes I have to say, let me unpack why that isn't appropriate. Two adults are talking, Lena. Maybe, you don't join in an adult conversation as a child. And like my mom just say, don't jump into grown folk conversation. We would listen, but boy, we would play like we wasn't listening, because you couldn't even play like that. But the level of disciplinary actions that I probably was subjected to as a child isn't always appropriate in 2020. So I have to, maybe I can't, I got popped in the mouth for trying my mama. Whereas now I have to make it a learning lesson.
Oh, we all did,
Jared. Oh, you said we all
did.
got popped in our mouth. So, I have to make it a learning lesson. You know what I'm saying? By saying, hey, babe, I have to help you understand when you stay in your place and learn at your level, there's lessons to be taken. And she's like, Dad, she's looking at me like, Daddy, what are you saying? I'm like, well, the lights are due on the 1st. You're going to give me your allowance back to pay it? She's like, no, I can't afford that. I'm like, oh, you can't? Oh, it's because that's my duty as a parent. So since it's my duty as a father to do that, these are the things I'm responsible for, and these are the things you're responsible for. In making your bed, saying yes sir, no sir, saying yes ma'am, no ma'am, doing your homework timely, being obedient in the classroom because I might just pop up. You know what I'm saying? Those are things that I require you to do. And when you segregate responsibilities and let a kid know what theirs are, and you letting her know what yours are, now she's learning what a father should be providing and doing. And not only am I being an example by voice, but I'm being an example by actions.
Preach, Jared. Okay. Dr. Cheney, I want you to jump into this. There's a question in the chat that speaks about the fact that we always see the image plastered about the Black woman or the mother holding it down for the family. How can men change, alter, or assist that narrative to move towards the family, the parents holding it down for the children, or even the man holding it down for the children and family?
I think when you look at it, that's a real situation where I think, and I'll say this, I think Black fathers have always gotten a raw deal on not being good fathers, even when they may or may not have been in the household, but they still got that raw deal of not being good fathers. I think it's important for any person who's a father, if they're in the household or if they're not in the household, they need to be able to, more importantly, talk to that particular child. Let that child know, even though, let's say they're not in the household, let that child know that I'm still here for you. I will always be here for you. Even be able to explain if that father is paying child support. Sometimes you have to have that honest conversation and say, hey, I know that I'm not here all the time, but I'm assisting your mother with the things that you need, and by giving her X amount of dollars per month. And then that opportunity, when you have that time, that extra time, instead of being with your boys, you just have to sacrifice to be with that particular child. Now, if you're in the household, it's important that you spend that time with your child. For example, with my daughter, she's 9 years old. She'll have a little bit more freedom to do things and be able to spend more time with her. So one of the things I do almost every single Friday is that we go to lunch. I make sure that she understands the importance of what a man is supposed to do as she grows. Her sister, who is 25, there's a joke in our household. I hope she's not listening, but she might be. But there's a joke in our household. We say, Lord, is she going to ever get married? Because she's always looking. I think she's comparing some guys to what her dad is. But it's a thing that you have to instill in your children, and I especially say for fathers and daughters, because you want to ensure that they understand that when they start dating, start seeing young men, that they're respected, that they understand the games that might be played, and so that is important. But even with fathers and sons, you want to be able to instill in them what it really is to be a man, what it is to be a man, the responsibility of being a man, and that is your responsibility to ensure that you take care of your family no matter what the situation is. So I think it's a really bad situation that Black fathers get labeled in. But I know too many really good Black fathers. We just don't hear about it because it seems like it's not popular to talk about how well fathers are doing, how much time Black fathers spend with their children, about the sacrifices that Black fathers make. I just think it's just not popular. But in reality, I think you find and you see in the community involved in their children's lives. Now, there is the opposite part. You do have some Black fathers that don't do the right things, but overshadowing that, I think really you find a large percentage of Black fathers doing well. It's just that it's just not a popular thing to talk about.
Agreed, Dr. Cheney. It's not a popular thing to talk about. All right, guys, will you put down some nuggets? Like, just a lot of nuggets this evening. Quick, fast, and hurry, and furious. Father Bean, does the Bible address topics about social injustice? Also, how do you discuss these, with your children?
Does the Bible address topics? The Bible is actually a testament of social justice and injustice. Where do I begin? From the Old Testament time, we see quite well that our God was a God of order. He liberated the oppressed, the Israelites. He took them out of Egypt and took them to a fair land, and he demanded them to obey laws and commandments, which they didn't. And then we saw all of the things that happened there because of not obeying. But there were always talks about the justice of God, the righteousness of God. There can never be spirituality and any talk about God if there isn't a level of justice. Our spirituality in its very nature envelops some sort of level of justice. God is a just God. Eh? If God is unjust, then many people will cease to worship that God because they would feel that the God isn't fair, the God isn't right, the God does things, to get back at them or to do something to them. In our God concepts, all of us have an understanding that God will be God, we will be his creatures, and that God at the end is a just and a righteous God. Jesus came, when he came in the incarnation, in the New Testament, he brought the same kingdom message, that of, remember, he went to the temple and he read from the prophet Isaiah, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, to bring release to the prisoners, give sight to the blind, sure that oppression, injustice, things that are ungodly, unfair, things that are inhumane, a lot of things that the gospel of Christ and the true message of his kingdom has to do with a leveling of the playing field so that everyone is on the same page, in the same book.
Okay.
We all are at the same level. There's no one who is higher
So,
than the
Father
other.
Bain, based on what you're saying, right? Let me take it a bit further. Your oldest may be going to university next year, correct?
Yeah.
And let's say they have the opportunity to go, to the United States, okay? And they're going into a church. The church is a mixed church. The head pastor is Caucasian. Some of the associate pastors or leaders are of different races. Okay, and they're speaking a message, the kingdom message, right?
Yeah.
How would you address? How would you? I shouldn't say address. How would you prepare your child to handle the fact that they may be hearing this message from Christian leaders, right? Who may not necessarily portray through their other actions when it's time for protests or they don't touch the topic of social injustice. How do you help your child to understand that that's still the same God that they're preaching about? Considering based on the foundation that you indicated, which is the Old Testament and New Testament spoke very clearly and is a testament of social justice and injustice.
Yeah, that is a very good question. And that is, for me, after I've done all that I could have done and have done with my teenage daughter now, like you say, she's preparing to go off to university, I sit and I worry sometimes, not in a bad way, but it's like they don't even know. And I sit, they don't even know, they don't even understand. They're not a part of that world in our country. They probably don't even see it or feel it. And I can instruct her, I can open her eyes, I can teach her, I can let her know, I can inform her. I could do a lot of things, but I think she has to experience that for herself. There are some things in life I say, my poor children don't even understand. We go to the United States for vacation or just have fun, and that's, but I'm always very cautious as a young Black man going there.
Okay.
And even if, like you're saying, it may shock their world, but it'll have to be a reality that they have to face. But at least it wouldn't be a blind reality. It would be something where father or daddy had told them about it. Their eyes were open, and they were made aware. And in that case, they too will know how to act and react, and definitely will realize that, there are many differences, but you belong to a side, and whatever side it may be, you must realize that the other, whatever color or whatever race, that we all are one. but that doesn't mean you have to hate or you have to be retributive or you have to do something back towards. You got to work in your understanding of God in that situation. And that's the thing I hope and pray that they're able to do, to use God, the God that I, introduce them to in the right way, not so much to go out in the world and feel all the anger and the hate and just jump in there and forget everything that, we learned at home. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Father Bain. It's interesting because first instance, we have a very mixed group of persons listening in today, right?
Yeah.
And the reality is history speaks to the fact that our slavery experience within the Bahamas was fundamentally different than the slavery experience in the United States. And I know that Jared wants to jump in. I can see it in his face. I know him too good. He's like, okay, Derek, I'm gonna wait for you to finish, and I'm gonna pound. So, Jared, what you want to say? Because I'm seeing you on the front lines, bro.
No, yeah,
you're on the front lines.
I got to be honest. I'm a preacher's kid. My mom, you know what I'm saying? My mom brought a powerful word. My grandfather, watching that in the church, and then to be quite honest, in the Black church, there were some things I didn't get though that I needed in the church, and something I tell my daughter all the time. I have to manage my convictions. I can't manage anyone else's convictions. And see, so with that being said, you also have to make your children culturally aware. And because I went to church on Monday night service, and I played the piano for Tuesday night service, and I went to Bible study on Wednesday night service, and then Thursday night prayer meeting, and Friday night church service, and did it again Saturday for prayer, and Sunday, all I knew was the church. So when I got exposed outside of my home, there were some culture shocks that I suffered from. And so I remember going to the payphone in boot camp and getting on the phone after being in a long line and saying, "Hey, Mom, the dude on my top bunk didn't even pray when he went to bed last night." She's like, "Well, what you worried about that for?" I'm like, "But that's what you taught me." So my assumption was everybody did it. You see what I'm saying? So what I had to learn then, you need to be culturally aware that everybody isn't raised the same. Everybody doesn't have the same belief system, but that doesn't make them less than me. And what you can do is, what happens is we'll be so stern in our faith, so strong in our faith, every opportunity starts transitioning into a judgment opportunity, which is completely contradiction to our faith, Yep. And so you have to be culturally aware that everybody's faith is important to them, foundationally important to them, but be aware that there's other faiths out there, one. And then two, something I had to learn is I came from a very small town in Louisiana where white folks lived on one side of the bridge, Black folk live on the other side of the bridge. So because of that, everybody from K through 12 for me were Black. I didn't get a lot of exposure to other races. So discrimination, I experienced it, but it was passive because all I was around was my people. So I didn't realize that my grandparents cleaning white folk houses for a living was a bad thing. My daughter, that opportunities can be presented, and some people that are not of color of our skin can still be your ally, and you can still trust them as an ally. That's a hard conversation to have in a day like this, when Black folks are being hunted in the USA. You know what I'm saying? And they'll be hunted by the color of their skin. And sometimes those people who are hunting us are those we trusted to keep us safe, like police officers. So in saying that, I say, you have to have honest conversation with them. And sometimes all that conversation, believe it or not, is not going to be connected to faith. It's not going to always be, I can't explain the civil rights movement from a biblical standpoint all the time. I can't explain the fact that I'm going out there to protest, and I tell my daughter, I'm called as a leader. Yeah. So I must go. You know what I'm saying? But I realize in going, I have to honor my duty as a father. So I have to go with the mindset that I got to come back home to my child. You know what I'm saying? So I have to come back home to my child, but also I have to go to show her there's nothing wrong with being a bold leader and stepping out for what's right.
Agreed.
You know what I'm saying? So managing those two things is important. And then the last thing is, we also have to remember too, that what you raised the child to do, and what faith you introduced them to, the God we introduced them to, the Christ that we talked about, Christ that we learned about. When they go out, they're going to experience their own things. And what you want them to be convicted about, they may not be convicted about. They're going to be exposed to other cultures. They're going to be exposed to other friends. And so for me, what I had to learn is I had to learn about the LGBTQIA community. You know what I'm saying? Every time I learned about it, there was another letter added to it. You know what I'm saying? I had to learn about that because had I not learned, I wouldn't be successful in higher education. You know what I'm saying? So I had to learn about gender identity, pronoun usage. Had I not learned, I wouldn't be successful. So what I try to tell my daughter is, because the church is explaining something to us, do not think that's the only interpretation that you're going to experience when you go into the professional world. The guidelines of the church may not be the guidelines of your workplace, but still stay rooted in your faith and your actions, but also know that everybody ain't got the same faith we got. And she may make that phone call I made to my mom and say, Daddy, when I go to school, these girls sleeping with everybody. Daddy, when I go to school, these girls talking to 5 and 6 dudes at one time. I don't know how I'm gonna handle that conversation, but when it happened, bro, I gotta be prepared to say, remember how I raised you. Remember the example I set. And then I also gotta remember what she sees in me is what she'll see as an acceptable norm. So maybe when I'm out here, I gotta remember, when I come home, do I smell like alcohol? When I wake up in the morning, am I praying with her before she go to school? You know what I'm saying? When she wake up, if she's not in my home, am I calling to say, hey, babe, let's do a quick prayer before you go. Daddy, I'm ready. Make it not a habit so it becomes a habit when she's an adult.
Yeah.
I agree, Jared. That's all I can say all day is I agree. You guys just throwing it down. If you have just tuned in, everybody, you are listening to the third installment of the Fatherhood Talk series. Our guests this evening are Dr. Marcus Cheney, Father Roderick Bain, also Mr. Lamont Stubbs, and Mr. Jared Benjamin. And we're talking about foundations of fatherhood. We're talking about fathers and education and mentorship. We're just touching everything this evening. If just letting everybody know, we have just added one more week to the series. Next week, we'll have 3 renowned guests as well. One is going to be Mr. Malik Chaplin from Black Man Can Inc. He's a father of 3. He's on the front line of the movement in Atlanta, Georgia currently. We also are gonna have as a guest Dr. Christopher Curry from the University of the Bahamas. He's an associate professor of history there at the University of the Bahamas. And we're also going to have Jeffrey Beckles. And we know Jeffrey Beckles from the Chamber of Commerce, but what you don't know, he's also an associate minister at his church, Christ Church. So that's going to be another riveting and provocative topic next week, Saturday. As we move into the final section, gentlemen, the final section of the evening, I have a question for you. And I'd like each of you, we're going to start with Lamont to finish the statement. Lamont, a good father provides, finish the statement for me.
Father provides support, security, and stability for his family and kids. A good father leads by example. A good father uses all the tools that he was equipped with as he grew up, all the good ones, and also learn from the negative ones and ensure that his kids know what is right from wrong. And I think something we touched on a bit today, leading by example. And I think that's one of the key things to parenting and fatherhood, especially when raising young men. I'm of the opinion that as young men, you could tell them to do what they need to do, or you could preach to them and you can instruct them, but they're going to observe you. They're going to see how you are reacting to situations. They're going to see how you are dealing with situations. And that is going to be what they aspire to, or the yardstick they use to measure themselves as they move forward. So I think we as fathers need to continue to provide that coverage for our family, continue to provide that support spiritually, mentally, financially, and just continue to be that foundation and be that pillar that everybody could stand on very strongly.
Okay. All right. Dr. Cheney, a good father provides, finish the statement for me, please.
I have to agree with Lamont. A provider, a role model. I think that one that, and when I say role model, let me reemphasize a little bit on that one. Not only a role model for your family, but just a role model, period. Yeah. A lot of times, you are observed by people that you really don't know that's actually observing you, and what you do might influence them in one way or the other. As an administrator, and I've worked primarily at historically Black colleges and universities, a lot of times I did not realize if people were really paying attention to what I was doing, but they were. There are people who still contact me when I was teaching high school. And so when I say role model, I think that you just have to take that to a whole nother level, not only for your family, but just being a role model in the community. I mentioned provider. I think that it's important that you are providing for your family. And so I think those are the two most important things. But I really like to emphasize with that role model, because a lot of times, I taught high school, tell my age off, but I taught high school 25, 30 years ago, and there's still students that I taught in high school that are still saying, hey, asking me for this advice, asking me for that advice. And it's just because they say, hey, we paid attention to what you did, how you carried yourself. Those are things I think that are important. And in that, I wanted to, if I could, go back, Derek, very quickly. Jared mentioned a point.
Sure, go right ahead.
I think when it comes to generations, every generation has changed. I remember my father telling me when I was growing up, he did not have, per se, white friends. Even though he was college educated, during the summers, he worked at then was the White Country Club cleaning windows. And so as I was growing up, he was amazed, and my parents were amazed that people that they knew from the country club, I was actually friends with some of their children or grandchildren at that point in time. And then I look even now, in the era that we're in, my daughter, for example, my youngest daughter, we live in an area that is predominantly white. And so my daughter, from her standpoint, the majority of her friends don't look like her. And so, trying to educate, as Jared mentioned, that trying to educate her in this day and time and what she is observing and seeing in the news, because she is real interested. She is a CNN person for a 9-year-old. She really pays close attention to what's going on. And so trying to explain to her, what she's observing every day. I've got all these friends. They don't look like me. We're friends. I can come to their house. They can come to my house. But we look at the United States, the world, where people that look like me are still being mistreated. So it's one of those things that I think, is just unfortunate, but it's reality. And as a father of 2 sons, I still, to this day, always tell my sons about being careful, about my 35-year-old son who lives in New York. When everything broke out, I was immediately trying to call him to make sure he was safe. So it's just the world in which we lived in. And I just want to emphasize more on what Jared was really talking about. I think our generations have changed, but reality is that we're still living in things that happen. We just celebrated Juneteenth on yesterday. And unfortunately, it's unfortunate we're still living in the Juneteenth days in 2020. That's just reality.
Reality. That's true. That's some good points, Dr. Cheney. It's so true. So true. We still live in it day in and day out.
Yeah.
Father Bain, a good father does not finish the sentence for me, please.
does not be a bad example. Be a bad example. I believe that a good father is supposed to be that exemplar for his children, not only his children, but other children as well. A father, a man who even acts as a father must be cognizant of himself, so much so that he realizes how he affects and changes history, how he's able to do things to influence history. And most of the times it is your children or your child that will look up to you. I've had funeral services and went to prisons where I had to talk with gangsters and bad boys and went to funeral and buried a young man who died at the hands of gang violence and whatever else. And there's a child crying out loud. They want their daddy. In the eyes of the world and our country, the deceased might have been the worst of the worst. But to a child, that is their father, and that is who they love. And for some, they will come to learn that daddy was very bad. Daddy was a bad influence. He did very bad things, and people will sometimes remind them of that. So we always have to make sure that our examples are positive, no matter what. You can be a poor father financially, an uneducated father.
Yes.
All of those are not excuse for you to be a poor example of what it is to be a father. And sometimes we like to spoil our kids and give them the best that we can give them. And even, we can even venture into stealing and doing stuff just for our kids to win them over. But never are we supposed to go the bad route to, demonstrate to them more or less, I am the father verifying to you that it is okay to be bad. They look up to us. And so we don't have the opportunity to be poor examples to our children. We should not be that.
Thank you, Father Bain. Thank you, Father Bain. A good father does not be a bad example, simply put.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a bad example. Excellent. And sorry.
Because sometimes we have to be able to relate to mother, to our wives, or to, I hate to use this term, to the baby mama. But sometimes our children are watching us and they see the way we behave. And sometimes they pick up bad things as opposed to good things. So daddy cannot never be that way to mother or to the mother of the child, just to make sure that is held in right standards.
Yes. Agree, Father Ben. So if you see me laughing over here, you said baby mama, and you are in your expression. Yeah. Jared, a good father does not finish his sentence for me, please.
A good father does not doubt. I reflect on a story. I don't know if you're familiar with the old show. It used to come on Friday nights called Family Matters. Steve Urkel was the actual, Steve Urkel was the star of the show. And I researched how did that show hit its popularity point. It was a newspaper article that came out, and it was doing a call for actors. And Steve Urkel's dad was a post office worker. And he went to his dad and said, I want to go to this cast call. He said, no, son, I already got a post office route for you. When I retire, they're going to give you my route. So his dad doubted him the whole way driving him there. And when he got there, he didn't do well. His dad picked him up and said, how'd it go? He said, I didn't get it. So the next morning, about 6 a.m, he was getting ready for work. He heard his son stirring in the other room, brushing his teeth. What you trying to do? He said, Dad, could you just drop me off to the cast again? He did it every day for 2 weeks. The boy began to mumble in the corner. And when the ratings went down, the writers came and they let him know, and the directors came and said, we're going to end up canceling the show because we just don't have the numbers we need. But we could write in a little kid that'd be a little funny, a little nerd. He said, we don't have the time to do another newspaper article or a cast call. He said, well, what about that little boy that was in the corner? The little boy that always mumbled words. You think he's coming today? He comes and he tells him, don't say nothing. Don't do nothing extra. Just go across the stage and say, did I do that? Just say, did I do that? And pull your pants up real high. So he does it and the crowd goes crazy. And what we learned from that was, he ends up getting an opportunity that produced millions of dollars for him because he remained committed even when his father doubted him. So as I think about it differently, had his father not doubted him, what would have been different? We look at the show, Laura had a little sister named Julie. We don't remember that much because they had to write her off the show to afford Steve Urkel. You know what I'm saying? We start thinking about it a little bit more because he stayed determined. He wasn't just Steve Urkel, he became Stefan. You know what I'm saying? He had two people on the show in the same character, so he got double the money because he remained determined. So what it showed me is, you know, a good father never allows you to give up, never doubts you. You know what I'm saying? Ensures that you remain determined. A good father remembers how hard it was for him, so he don't have to make it harder for you by being the obstacle in the house. He encourages you to jump out on faith, lean into your faith, ground yourself in your faith, and when things get challenging, guess what? It's gonna happen. Strong wind, when it's not rooted, it blow the branch over, right? But when a strong rooted branch is strong and the wind comes, it stays sturdy and it hold on. So for what I learned from Family Matters was, you can't doubt your child. You got to be an uplifter. You got to be a motivator. A good father does not doubt, but a good father also learns that you got to be your child's best cheerleader. When my daughter missed a basket at the basketball goal, I said, great shot. You know what I'm saying? When she missed a flip on the beam when gymnastics, great flip. Everything's going to be motivation, because I know what was a bad flip today, 20 years from now, she might have a gold medal and her last name be Benjamin. So it's key that we motivate at the ground level and let them know every step you might fall. I'm clumsy. I used to carry my mama groceries in. I skip a step, I fall. T.D. Jakes said, the reason you fell because you didn't look at the value of each step. Each step had a purpose. So teaching your child the purpose is important. Don't doubt, you know what I'm saying, and keep your child motivated. A good father is all of those things. And I believe I'm looking at a bunch of good fathers on this panel today, and I'm excited to be part of it. And I'm excited to share these jewels because I believe we motivated other folks to be good fathers.
Agree 100%, Jared, 100%. You know, I'll give you a shameless plug. Hashtag Lead Speaks. You know?
Thank you, brother.
You know, shameless plug. You know, really, I'm proud of, you know, what you have done and are doing. Just to let everybody know, we are sponsored by the Pico brand. There's still opportunities to support his business. He's a local entrepreneur. He's a man of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. He's also a graduate of the University of the Bahamas with a bachelor's degree in marketing. He has some excellent products. You can look at the Pico brand on all social media platforms to see what work he does. He does ships internationally as well. Okay, and we're going into the last question of the evening before we close. And this question, everybody is going to have an opportunity to answer it. We're going to start with Dr. Cheney. What is the one thing you are still working on as a father? And you have 2 minutes.
Wow. One thing that I'm working on as a father, I think the someone said it earlier. It might have been Lamont. I can't remember. But as a father of a 9-year-old and being a father of a 35-year-old, the one thing I'm still working on is technology, and being able to really, because of my 9-year-old, I've had to learn everything from TikTok to YouTube channels. You know, all of these things that she is engaged with. I've also had to learn new math. You know, when I was growing up, math didn't go the way they go. It goes a totally opposite direction. But I think that the biggest thing is really being able to, when you have a child that the closest sibling is almost 15 years age difference. One of the things that I'm still learning as a father is being a father almost all over again, being able to do those things from technology, being able to still be able to be actively involved, as opposed to, you know, as you sit back and you watch your 24-year-old and you kind of just like root them on. But not only you have to root on this 9-year-old, you have to really be able to participate and still be able to do the things you have to do. So I would just say, Derek, in a nutshell, is just being regenerated, be reinvented as a father again. And so I think that is the key thing for me personally when you ask that question.
Where did he go?
I don't know where he went. Yeah, young babies. Technology ought to be easy for him.
I don't know.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know what happened. I guess too many devices. You know, it is 4 children in this house, all gaming. So I guess too many devices. Because I'm talking, everybody's like, "Where did he go?" You know. Sorry. Yeah. So with that being said, thank you, Dr. Cheney. Father Bain.
What am I still? What's the question again?
Yes, exact. As a father, one thing that you're still working on.
I would have to say reconciliation or reconciling. All right. I grew up on a family island where simplicity was what we were used to. And we had a very simple, pure, genuine type of family, type of living. And now I'm noticing a sort of complexity when it comes to how I father with my children. Back then, it was easy to hear the voice of a father, my grandfather, and you listen and you go along and you just know that's right and you don't question it and you don't bother because that is the voice of the day. That is the standard, the rule, that is what it is. Nowadays, I'm reconciling me, the priest, who you may respect out there. My kids, I'm walking them to school or taking them somewhere and they just see, some respect coming from some people outside. And then here they are in the house, in the home, and I would laugh and talk and play with them. And they almost shocked to say, "Daddy, you playing or laughing or doing a lot of foolishness." And so I'm trying to make sure that I don't lose the connection. I reconcile me and who I am with my children, as opposed to me and my professional world as a priest when I'm out there. I don't ever want them to feel that they cannot come to me and talk about anything that's happening with them or to them. I always want them to know that there's access. I don't ever want them to fear me. And I don't never want them to think that because I'm a priest, there's some things that are just off limits or too evil or too bad to talk to me about. All right. So I'm trying my best to all that I've learned in my upbringing, the simplicity and the purity that I came up with, to extend that to them so that they're able to see that life, when you're relating to daddy, you're relating to someone who understands. And in a simple way, he will be able to work with you and deal with you. It doesn't have to get complex, no attitude, no drama, no all that kind of thing. Let's just keep it pure as it should be and relatable, and we can kind of get to know each other well. And I do try to open up avenues like this so that who I am is what I do, and what I do is what they see me as. So there's no contradiction nowhere in all of that, just to make sure that everything is reconciled and they can say, "Daddy is really that daddy, that man." And I know sometimes they hear me preach or see me on the altar and they say, we come home sometime and they joke at me and say, "Daddy, you're a real funny guy." But I'm happy they could do that and say that. And
You're a real funny guy, Father Bain. You're a real funny guy.
Keep the word funny there. I don't like funny. But anyway, but I create that atmosphere where we can talk and laugh and be who we are, So I'm just wanting to keep that. I'm working at that. That is what I want. I want them to be themselves around me and me to be who I am around them. And hopefully that world would mesh and we will be the people that
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Father Bain. Thank you. Oh, man. Lamont, one thing that you're still working on as a father.
So one of the key things I'm working on, I find myself continuously working on with my kids, is allowing them to be themselves. While as parents, we always want to direct them, we always want to guide and lead them. I think it's also important for us to understand who they are as individuals, some of the characteristics and some of the traits they possess, and allow them some leeway to display those personalities and display those characteristics, so we could help them, which will help them be an individual and be who they are. So one of the things I find myself is, as most parents, we always want to correct, we always want to guide, we always want to be able to speak to, or thinking what we say or what we know is the best. But sometimes, as young as they may be, they have their own opinions, and they also need to develop their own sense of self. So as they get old and they become adults, they're then able to speak up for themselves, that they're able to identify with what they like, what they dislike. So me just sometimes sitting back and allowing them to be themselves is something that I consistently work on, and I want to be better at, Mm-hmm.
Good stuff. I love the fact that everybody's being so honest, open, and free, and just expressing that we are not perfect. We have shortcomings that we are still working with, and people don't normally hear men speak candidly from the heart about challenges. So I thank you all for being so open with what you are still working on as men and as fathers. I'm Jared. Last one up.
Thank you.
One thing that you're still working on, bro.
Patience. I was laughing as I was thinking about what I was working on. My sister, she's watching. Thank you, Brittany, for being on. She types patience. Joyce Meyer says patience is not the ability to wait, but the ability to keep a good attitude while waiting. And so, just being patient in my actions and patience in what I expect from my children, man. It's been an amazing opportunity to be here with you guys, man. So I'm definitely working on patience.
Thank you, Jared. Everybody, we have come to the end of the third installment of the Fatherhood Talk series. I'd like to thank the extraordinary guests that we have tonight. Father Roderick Bain, Jared Benjamin, Dr. Marcus Cheney, and Lamont Stubbs. You have been awesome. You've left us with many nuggets. We appreciate you. We love you. We may even bring you back. You never know. But for those who some bit of insight, please feel free to tune in at the same time for the last installment of the Fatherhood series for this year. And even Lily is encouraging you guys in the background to tune in next week, Saturday, same time, same place, where we'll have Jeffrey Beckles, Dr. Christopher Curry, and we'll also have Malik Chaplin from the Black Man Can Inc. movement within the United States. Until next time, I am your host, Derek Smith. Have an excellent Father's Day, and please remember to be present in your children's lives, fathers. Have a great one. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you. Yeah, everybody.
Thank you, gentlemen. It was great. Thank you. Thank you. Excellent conversation. Excellent conversation, guys.
Thank you, Eric. Appreciate you, brother.
Thank you. Thank you, my brother.